The hills are alive with the sounds of music. There's something of something. That little pussy Jimmy is a little fake. Oh, yes, he is. And Eddy's a dumbass. And I'm done. Welcome back, peoples.
And happy
Jimmy watch.
Halloween to the early folks.
It's about a week early, but that's okay because Halloween is always October.
Yes.
So this episode we are going to be singing. Oh, why did I say singing? We're gonna be reading.
I like the title for this episode, Nightmare on Ed Street.
Oh, did you ever see that one from Nightmare on Elm Street?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Protective gloves and headgear. Okay, that's cool. Anyway, so we're gonna actually be reading some ghost stories because it's our Halloween special.
Yes, we are.
So let's see. Let me go with let's see. I'll do the Crackle Pumpkin. Do you want to start, David?
I guess I'll start since mine is the longest.
Yes.
Okay. This is from the Creepypasta Wiki site, and it's based on the Edds, known as The Lost Episode. Are you ready, boys and girls?
Dun dun dun.
Okay. As you may know, the popular show, Ed, Edd, and Eddy, has been running for a long time. However, between October 7th, 2003, and October 21st, 2003, episode 34 was accidentally released 1 week before it was scheduled to. It was also known to some around the office. The primary writer had been sick with the flu, and instead of going on to make episode 34, the show was supposed to replay episode 1 at 5 a.m. Eastern. People reported a very disturbing new episode premiering on Cartoon Network. Some children were unfortunate enough to see it. Apparently, the quality of the episode was melancholy when I don't know, however this guy put it, when held to the regular standards. Animation was choppy, sound was constricted and very muddly. Reports of the line running up and down, similar to a crappy VHS tape, were received. Scenery was described as overwhelming, dark, and depressing without changing props and other background objects stormy looking. Characters also behaved oddly instead of the normal goofy hijinks, inspired personalities. Viewers complain they seemed extremely weird, hateful in a way, toward each other, and constantly about to begin sobbing after the lines. The protagonist also had a very bad lisp. No one knows why, but he spoke with a sexual tone, and that further bothered the viewers. I was one of those viewers. The episode began with Eddy walking down the street with Ed. I noted the third Ed was missing. There was a shot coming from in front of the two to show them walking toward the viewer. He, Eddy, was wearing the angry look he does when something goes wrong. His eyes were red around the white area. Ed looked absolutely forlorn, and practically dragged behind Eddy, tears in his eyes, which were both lazy and looking in opposite outward directions. Kevin, the series antagonist, was riding his bike opposite of the Eds toward them. The shot became blurry, and low moans were heard coming from Eddy before Kevin hit him, which never happened because the screen went black. The screen then snapped back, and Kevin was again headed toward Eddy. The view was so blurry this time, all I saw was a green blob headed toward a yellow one. Again, a low moan, only this time it sounded like the microphone was broken and loud static, greatly overshadowing the moan. A claymation sequence of Double D sleeping in Eddy's bed came up. Honestly, it may have just been this weird feeling I was getting, but I jumped and shivered. Walking up and getting out of bed, he moved oddly around the circular room, a fast pitter-patter of footsteps being the only audio. The steps sounds were very clear, as I was shown a bird's eye of him scraping around the room. There was no visible doors. Ed began screeching, sounding like a fisher cat, as he moved wildly around the cell of a room, faster and faster, until the screen began blurring again. The purple room's color swallowing a now orange blur. An extreme close-up of Eddy's front door sat in absolute silence for a mad long time, at least 2 minutes of dead silence and a door. Next we see Jimmy and Sarah at a doctor of some sort, probably oral. Jimmy, obstructed in view by a hanging lamp, is crying loudly, with Sarah trying to comfort him in a usually warm fashion. "It hurts, Sarah, it hurts!" Suddenly the door of the room is smashed open by a new character, a dentist. His face wasn't shown because he was tall enough to be out of the shot. Sarah was escorted out of the room. Jimmy was shown. His headgear was mangled, the front bent upward, stretching his lip very high, tearing proportions. The front of his gums was trickling blood, and the teeth were missing. The disturbing part was he had lost both arms and legs beforehand, apparently, and sat there crying. I almost cried as I came to a conclusion. The others had beaten him up and bent his headgear. The camera stayed on his mangled face for a few seconds, still as the picture silent as ever. Commercials came on. We are instantly insulted with the very hairy Rolf in his darkened shed, fisting the cow repeatedly. The visual loops and gets blurry again as the scene pans out. Naz is reading a magazine on her couch. The quality is now perfect. Eddy is now alone. Without Ed, the quality declines worse than before, and he is still walking, the sun now lightening the moon somewhat as he smiles and begins running. The door is shown again. We see through Eddy's eyes as he reaches out and opens it. His house is nice and bright, but very badly played violin is barring in. The only audio in the scene as he makes his way through the house. Eddy opens the door to his room. Johnny is shown under Naz's couch cushion, as he crawls out on all fours in a comedic way and pops up behind her. Still obvious. I laughed because someone forgot to draw his eyes, and I thought of a mole. Suddenly, I stopped laughing as he started swallowing her head. Still in a cartoonish fashion, of course. But this was different. She stayed like this until she started kicking and struggling. Johnny held her like this until she went limp. A zoom in on his face revealed extremely small human eyes. Double D was laying on Eddie's floor, no longer in claymation. The camera showed Eddie's house for the remainder of the episode, about 3 minutes, and the next program began the spot. The end.
For a second there, I thought Johnny was just about to rape Naz or something.
So,
That's pretty scary.
that is scary. That is scary.
Well, I have a story. It's a nursery rhyme. So here we go. Crackle, crackle, Mother Goose. Have you any feathers loose? Truly I have, pretty fellow. Enough to fill a pillow. Here are quills, take 1 or 2, and down to make a bed for you. Dun dun dun. It's really short. And I have like 2 more as well. The next one is actually proven is the shortest it's the shortest American Horror Story in the world, and it consists of only 2 sentences. The last man on Earth sat alone in a room. There was a knock at the door. You're supposed to react, David.
Oh, who is it?
It's weird because he's the last guy, and there's still a knock. But yeah, that's that one. And then this very long one from a spooky Yellowstone. It's called The Headless Bride. Once there was a lovely young woman growing up in a wealthy shipping family in New York, New York. In those days, wealthy young women were expected to make their debut in society and to marry a wealthy young man from a good family and then get banged repeatedly in their own bed. But our young lady was a bit of a rebel. When she grew old enough to marry, she scorned the wealthy young society man in favor for an older who was working for us as a servant in her house. This little slut. Of course, there was a big argument within the family when the young woman announced her choice of husband. Her parents were furious, particularly her father, who accused the servant of courting his daughter in order to gain a prominent position in the shipping company. When the young lady insisted upon the marriage, her father gave the couple a lump sum of cash, with the implication that they should leave New York after the wedding and never come back. By the time the young couple reached the Old Faithful Inn in Yellowstone, the new husband was gambled away all the money that his wife's family had bestowed upon the newlyweds. There was barely enough money for the couple to finish their honeymoon trip, and nothing whatsoever in which to buy a house or start a family. The young woman was upset with her husband. They had quarreled often about money during their honeymoon journey, and by the time she knew her father had been right about the greed in her new husband, he was obviously more interested in her than her money, in her money than her. Still, the couple was flat broke and needed something to pay the concessionaires here at Yellowstone. So she telephoned her father to ask him for some money. Her father refused to give her a penny. That night, the couple had a terrific fight in the relative privacy of their bedroom in the inn. The husband stalked out of the inn in a fury, leaving his bride locked in her room. The bride did not emerge for days, and finally the staff of the inn sent someone to check on her. No one answered when the housekeeper knocked on the door. Using the housekeeping key, the staffer stepped into the room and gasped in shock. The room looked as a hurricane had swept through the interior. Clothes were strewn everywhere, and bedclothes were practically on the floor. Worse, the housekeeper was overwhelmed by the metallic odor that permeated everything. There was no sign of the bride, but the stink that wafted from the attached bathroom hinted that the housekeeper might see, lying in the bathtub, in a pool of conjugated blood, was the body of the unhappy bride, which ended grotesquely in a ragged stump of a neck. Her head was nowhere to be seen.
The housekeeper's scream summoned the rest of the staff. The authorities were summoned. The family was notified, and the room cleaned. Everything was done to locate the murderer. But the husband was never apprehended. Finally, the whole story was the husband up to avoid the scandal to permeate the family. A few days after the discovery of the murder, a foul smell up the crow's nest where the musicians often played for the evening dances was traced to its source, the bride's severed head. Towel's blonde curls framed with the wide-eyed, horror-twisted face, finally beginning to rot. The burial of the poor murdered bride should have been the end of a terrible incident, and so it proved until one midnight, when a staff member was up late reading a book, heard a strange noise coming from the lobby. It was at the stroke of midnight when he hurried out onto the balcony and looked upward, seeking the source of the noise. He looked up towards the crow's nest far above, and saw a glowing figure in the white snowy descended of the stairs from the crow's nest. Tucked under its arm was a tousled, curled, wide-eyed head. Frozen with horror, the man watched the bride descend the steps and float along the corridor until she reached the door of her room. Then she vanished. From that day onward, there are people who say they've seen the headless bride walking down the stairs from the crow's nest at the stroke of midnight, sadly seeking for a lost husband and her lost dreams. Myself, I've never stayed up to see. Wasn't that scary?
Whoa. I think I pissed a little.
I shitted my pantses. I'm not sure if I said that right, but I don't care. That was actually pretty scary. I like it. And that's in Yellowstone. I've been there. That's really scary.
That is pretty scary.
And we still have some more time. Shall we try finding another horror story, or shall we just talk about the game?
Oh, we can talk about my screw ups.
Oh yeah, I've been noticing you've messed up a lot, especially with the chandeliers.
That's why I use the power of stop and start with cut and paste and all that magical stuff.
Magic. And go!
But pretty much all this scam is real fast. Pretty much, Mr. Yum Yums, Jimmy's, stuffed bunny, was put in this house by the Edds. And, well, for a few quarters, they'll go back in the house and get it for him. Well, the Kanker sisters were here too. And they're holding Mr. Yum Yum hostage. So, the only way they'll give back Mr. Yum Yum, if each of the Edds get each Kanker sister a boyfriend present. So, whatever they tell the Edds to go get for each of them, you gotta go throughout the house for all these booby traps and find whatever they asked for.
Wow.
And just like that, everyone has their gift. And now we can get Mr. Yum Yum.
He's Double D. Why are they using a saw on a bunny rabbit? This is just messed up. And here we go, cutscene. Undead. Zombies. What the? One quarter to go into that entire thing. Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, at least we know they're cheap. Well, tune in next time for the finale part 6.
Indeed.
And we will finally end, and hopefully, and thankfully, it didn't take us a year to do all this. So, yay for that.
Yes, so we shall see you at the end. Happy Halloween, you freaks!
Happy Halloween!